program Lunchtime Live series. I'm Chandra Luckett, Director of Marketing and Communications here at Chris 180, and today we are going to be discussing grief and loss in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis. It's been the headlines for weeks, and many of us have struggled in losing something in this season, whether it's a celebration, an event we've missed, a special moment in life, or sadly the loss of a loved one. We are all facing grief and difficulties during this season. And today, two of our Chris 180 clinical experts are here to help you process and move forward. We'd love to hear your comments and questions for them, so please drop them below and we will answer those during this series today. Today, joining us as our special presenters, we have Brittany Walters, the director of the Chris Counseling Center Atlanta, and Ashley Silas, the clinical manager at Chris Counseling Center Gwinnett. Thank you, ladies, for joining us, and remember to leave us your questions below. Let's start the conversation.
Hey, Ashley.
Hey, Brittany.
It's pretty wonderful to be here today and have the opportunity to talk with our audience about some really tough topics. And our hope today is, of course, to unpack some of the challenges that we know so many people are facing, as well as give some pretty strategic and structured tips on how to work through some of the challenges and emotions that everybody is facing together.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm particularly glad that we're having this conversation. You and I have talked, and I've been really transparent that I myself noticed over the past couple of weeks that I was experiencing some grief and loss. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that with the people, and hopefully we can help somebody today.
Absolutely. I mean, you and I have talked. I've been on calls the past couple of weeks. We've checked in with our staff and clients alike, and this is truly unprecedented and something that people of all ages, of all cultures, across socioeconomic statuses are really experiencing and facing together. So in a way, it kind of brings us together and makes us all kind of human on the same level. So where I was thinking that we could start today was really, what is grief? You know, that's a word that we've become very familiar with, and typically the first thing that people think of, in my experience, is the loss of a loved one.
Absolutely.
And certainly the loss of a loved one can be one of the most devastating things somebody can experience. But what we also wanted to talk about today was how grief can encompass the loss of so many different types of things. As Chandra mentioned, it could be the loss of a person, it could be the loss of an experience, it could be the loss of a tangible item, and all of those things are really valid.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also sometimes you don't know that's what you're experiencing, and so I think it'll be really important for us to talk about how you know if that's what's happening with you as well. I think even for myself, it was several weeks into it, and these experiences and things that were happening with me that I couldn't explain.
Absolutely.
And then ultimately, once I named it, that was really powerful for me. So hopefully that'll be the case for somebody else today.
You took the words out of my mouth. You know, naming our emotions make them easier to understand, comprehend, accept, and then move into, okay, what do I do about this?
Yeah.
And that is fair about any emotion that we experience, positive or negative. You know, the interesting thing about grief is when people hear that word, they typically focus on the emotional responses that come associated with the losses that we mentioned, like the sadness, the depression, the frustration. But what a lot of people don't know is grief can actually have an impact on cognition, your physical body, and there is research around how the brain actually changes when somebody goes through a loss like this. So chemicals and hormones actually change in the brain, which I think helps people, you know, take a little bit of a different approach to navigating these issues.
Yeah, I think it's so important that you said that, because how many people, and I'm asking you guys directly, have had this experience over the past few weeks? You didn't remember something, or you lost track in the middle, or you were unsure about why you responded a certain way. I have, had those questions for myself, like what was I doing?
Totally.
And really, again, being able to recognize, hey, this is an experience that we're having right now, this very shared universal experience of loss, and it's affecting me. I did not know that I was affected. I was one of those people who barreled through,
Right.
just kept working, kept living, trying to make sure everybody else was okay. And I found in conversations with other people that those are the ones of us who get stopped in our tracks, right? Because we've been going. We kept working, kept living, kept helping.
Absolutely.
And maybe we felt like you talked about that sadness a little bit, or maybe we felt that irritability, but just figured, hey, I have so much going on, I'm doing so much, and just kept pushing and didn't recognize this is a grief symptom too. So I think it's so powerful that you're really going through and saying, hey, all of that could be grief.
And you know what's interesting is that people of all ages really express these things a lot differently. So of course we know kids and adolescents, their brains are already changing and molding. You know, the brain isn't even fully developed until age 26, which is wild if anybody thinks about how many life experiences they've had between birth and 26. Oh my goodness. And now we've added in the abrupt loss of things like socialization, play dates for kids, the ability to interact with your teacher every day, get hugs from their peers. Those changes can have a profound impact on kids. And what people don't realize is it can manifest in ways of appetite changes, sleep-wake problems, nightmares. They can get fussier at that early childhood, at those early stages. Actually, I think we have a question, which is really exciting.
Yes, we've got a question that just came in from Instagram. It says, what ways do you recommend we support our young children, high schoolers, college age, etc., as educators and caregivers?
The best question that we could have gotten, and one of the paramount reasons that we're here. You know, when Ashley and I started to talk about what we wanted to address today, we said, okay, it's important to talk about kind of what this is and then also give people some really practical tips. So I know I can speak for some of the earlier, younger kids. Like I mentioned, socialization is huge, and the really good news is that kids are incredibly resilient. And they can get engaged a lot quicker than sometimes we give them credit for. So I know I have friends with young children that have done virtual play dates, virtual dance parties, you know, hopped on Zoom or FaceTime and blasted music and gotten their bodies moving together. I've seen virtual birthday parties. I've seen neighborhoods organizing parades where everybody kind of drives by in their car, still appropriately distanced, but the kids are kind of outside jumping around and they can still see their friends. The other really big thing that I think a lot of our families have done a great job with is we've been encouraging our adults and caregivers to tap into their inner child. You know, kids, number one, they might say that they love their computer or their iPad more than anything, but really they love that interaction with caregivers. And so we encourage our caregivers and adults to tap into your inner child, play dress up, get silly, go outside, do a nature scavenger hunt. You know, the family connections and the activities don't have to be expensive and they don't have to be via technology. They can really be good old-fashioned family fun.
Yeah, and I think some of those things are going to be true for your older teens and your college-age people as well. The idea of thinking, what did I enjoy anyway? Everything that you enjoyed anyway didn't necessarily involve something that's not socially appropriate in this current day and age. So if it really was about connecting with friends, same thing. How do we get to connect with friends? I was a part of a online, I don't know how you call it, just like an online game the other day. It was really great. And it was, again, teenagers, college age people, 30-somethings. And it was one of those games where, I forget the name of it, one of these games where somebody pulled up questions and everybody in the chat got to, you know, asking and answering questions. And it was just really cool and fun. And it was something that we wouldn't have thought of before, but probably would have done anyway. So it wasn't like, now we're creating a socially appropriate activity to do right now. It just felt like having fun with friends, reconnecting with people that we hadn't spoken to in a while, and it was great. It was great. And so that's something, even you touched on the importance of parents and caregivers for little kids. They will not admit this to you, but the same thing is true for teenagers.
Oh, absolutely.
There's still so much research that shows that even when you're in those teen years, at 13 to 19, even into those early 20s, that your parent's voice is still the loudest voice, still the most influential voice in your life. So they might fight you tooth and nail, but they do want to play Monopoly.
Absolutely.
They do want to go on those
Right.
family walks. Those things are still really valuable. We talked about even doing things for other people.
Absolutely.
And those are great too. So talking to your grandparents, or heard on the radio, there was a teenager in the Atlanta area who started a project where they're donating flowers to nursing homes.
I love that.
And so this is a group of teenagers are doing this. So high school students, early, I think the oldest guy is like first starting into college, and they're doing that, and that's so fulfilling for them in this time too. So looks like we have another question.
Yes, this comes from Susan from Facebook. She says, Brittany, you mentioned change in sleep patterns. Just this week, I've started having dreams around COVID-19, and I'm waking up every 2 to 3 hours. Any tips on how I can settle my mind to help with sleep quality?
Absolutely a huge issue for so many people, myself included. So what I've noticed is routine can be really powerful when trying to address any challenge. And specifically around sleep, sometimes what we'll see is our thoughts will kind of ramp up at night. And we are quick to maybe go to our phone or check our feed or even play solitaire on our phone. But research shows actually screen time and the LED effects on screens can really continue to activate parts of the brain. So you want to make sure to really limit your screen time in the evening hours, as well as your access to news. You know, we all want to really stay connected and abreast of what's going on with this crisis, and day to day, we know how quickly things are changing. So it's critical to stay informed, and at the same time, we have to make choices that are good for our minds and our bodies. So that might mean setting a limit. I'm not gonna watch news after 6 p.m. You know, what kind of routines, what types of things can help you relax? Is it reading a book? Is it having a hot cup of tea before you go to sleep, limiting your screen time? What types of routines help you? If you're usually a morning person that showers, maybe showering at night is something that you could do to relax your body. There's a lot of research around how engaging your senses can help your sleep-wake cycle. And so focusing on those sensory experiences like drinking hot tea that's soothing, or taking a hot shower or a hot bath, reading, things like that can really be helpful.
Yeah, you know, and I thought a lot when you were talking just now about that mindfulness.
Absolutely.
And really the power of these things like deep breathing that really do calm your mind, release those really lovely calming chemicals in your brain and in your body, and help to settle you. I'm glad Susan brought that up, because I've had that experience as well. My 10-year-old as well. I got the call from her teacher. It's like, okay, I think I should tell you now. She does homeschool. She's like, I think I should tell you now that Zoe's been sleeping in class for, you know, for these 2 days. And so what we realized is that her sleep cycle had been affected. And so one of the things that we're doing now for her and for myself in the evening is that deep breathing. We're doing that mindfulness. So like you said, really getting into that great routine, and then in the evening being really intentional about calming, getting the house nice and quiet, doing some like square breathing to really calm us down, get our heart rate nice and slow, and then sleep music. I find that ambient music, because I do have a brain that races. The thoughts are outrageous. But I found that ambient music, so that there's something happening in the background that my mind can get a hold to. Ambient music better than things with lyrics, because then I would be focused on the lyrics. But just having something in the background, or even really fun things, whale sounds or ocean sounds, that have something nice happening in the background to keep my mind from racing and also calm me, have been really helpful in that area too.
Well, you touched on a huge point, because those things can really relax the nervous system. And pro tip, there are so many free apps out there right now offering free meditation. I listened to one last night because I was tossing, I was turning, my mind was racing, I was thinking about my to-do list for today, I was thinking about this conversation, And I found myself just starting to have urges to play solitaire or check my email. And so instead I use the app Insight Timer. It's free.
Yeah, I love that one.
And I actually listened to this guided meditation that kind of eases you into sleep. So there's guided meditation, and then there's also sleep music. So we encourage you to try it out and see what works for you. I think we have another question.
Yes, we do. And this one is, I lost my job a few weeks ago because of the crisis, and I'm worried I won't find one for months. I'm okay financially right now, but I'm worried so much I can't focus on applying for jobs. Any tips?
That's such a challenge that so many people are facing right now. The biggest broad practical tip I have for you is A, you're valid, and that makes complete sense. So don't shame yourself for feeling distracted or feeling worried. You know, worry and anxiety is a very natural part of life, and especially right now, it's important to have that self-compassion. So try your best to stay in the present, set a list, set a goal for the day, and the goal might be today I'm just going to research jobs, and tomorrow I'm going to work on my resume, and then the next day I can tackle applying in small buckets. You know, sometimes when we break down a really large to-do task or something that's so overwhelming and so scary and so anxiety producing, we become avoidant and we're kind of like, we'll deal with that next week. But really breaking down those big tasks into manageable bite-sized pieces does two things. A, it helps you work toward that goal with reasonable expectations and with a consequential sequence in place, so you're moving forward. And you feel productive, and we know that feeling productive and feeling like we're accomplishing something can increase that serotonin and dopamine, just like you mentioned a little while ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are really, really great tips. And also just looking at the resources that are out there. We're fortunate right now using our social media. Lots of people are just posting what companies are hiring, what opportunities and resources are out there. I think you talked a little bit more about earlier, maybe that was a conversation we were having, just about volunteerism even in this time, and the value that plays and the opportunities that can open up as well.
Great point.
Wow,
I think we have another question.
Yes, this one comes from Instagram. It says, what language is recommended to calm the fears of children who have parents working in the medical profession?
Oh gosh, I want to take that one.
Go for it.
Because that is my daughter,
Right.
who I don't know how she's so aware of what's
so
going
smart.
on, but we are having the most interesting conversations because she is very hungry for the information, for the knowledge about the things that are going on right now. And I find that being transparent with her, I think if she is old enough, mature enough to have this conversation with me, then I'm gonna be that mom that's responsible and honest with her.
Right.
You know, you talked about being validating before, and that's so true. So I think you validate that. Hey, that's a very real concern, and I'm grateful that my little person understands what's going on in the world, that you care about what's going on with mom or dad, and you want to have this conversation, and then that reassurance, you know, these are the steps that I'm taking to protect myself. So I talked to her about how we're doing social distancing at work. I talked with her about how we're doing a lot of things virtually, and just really giving her the tips that she needs to know that this is how mom is keeping safe. You know, we're following the CDC guidelines and all of these great things. And so the conversation comes back up because as she hears more information, kind of like you said, the news is giving us all of these things. So it comes back up, and I find that validating, supporting, being really honest, and giving her the information has really helped to keep it as reasonable worry and not fear.
And just to piggyback on that quickly, so I see we have another question, which is phenomenal. Just like you said, Ashley, when we don't fill in the gaps for kids, they fill them in.
Yeah.
So kids are so sponge-like that they will hear something, and just like adults, sometimes their minds will go to worst case scenario, or maybe that they've had a friend that's lost a family member due to COVID, and that is petrifying for anybody, and especially a child. So the more transparent and upfront you can be, within, you know, limits, depending on their age, is critical, because we want to be the ones filling in the gaps for our kids and not, you know, having their imagination kind of filling in the gaps.
Absolutely.
So we have another question.
Yes, this next one comes and the person says, you all have talked about grief, but how would I know if I am experiencing it currently?
That's a good one.
Well, grief looks different, like we talked about, for everybody. So the first thing is to really pay attention to how you're feeling. So for some people, it helps to journal frequently about how they're feeling, or keeping a log or a schedule, just to notice any changes in your patterns. And then the second thing would be to acknowledge how you're feeling and recognize that there are small things that you can do to combat those uncomfortable feelings. So again, grief can look emotional, it can look physical. Loss of appetite could be related to grief. Cognition, if you're having trouble focusing. The first step is to recognize what you're experiencing. The second step is to name it. And then the third step is to put small practices in place. A lot of it is trial and error. So a big part of therapy, yes, we go to school to help people, and there's a lot of research around many of the techniques that we know have worked for many people, but some techniques that work great for this group of people don't work at all for this group of people. And so a big part of therapy is trial and error. So just simply giving something a try and then reflecting on, did that work for me and did it not? Worst case scenario, it didn't work and you're no worse off. Best case scenario is you find something that helped move the needle a little bit or a lot of it. So that would be my best advice.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And kind of similarly, I think some of those practices, whether it's an experience of grief or loss, or that's just your body's way of dealing with it, because a label can be helpful for somebody, but for somebody else, maybe the label of grief or loss doesn't resonate with you, but some of the examples that Brittany gave, maybe that resonates with you. So maybe just trying some of those tips, and just that experience feels good anyway. We talked about this before as well. Just having the conversation was really powerful. So for us, we've spoken with our colleagues, we've spoken with our staff that we supervise. I think we've both even talked about just having conversations with people in our communities and in the community, and having the conversation about this shared experience. What's been going on? What have I been feeling? What experiences have I been having? And just having that conversation, somebody else connecting with the experience, whether I landed at the point of saying, yes, this was grief or loss or sadness or depression. I think that for some of us wasn't quite as critical, but having the conversation just felt really good and kind of eased some of those symptoms. So that might be helpful for you as well.
And it's okay to say today was a bad day. I said that to my sister last night. I called her and I said, today was a bad day, and I don't know why, but I felt tearful, and it was nothing big. It just, there are phases to this thing, and that's okay. And I think just saying it's okay is sometimes the best medicine. So we have another question.
Yes, it says, what tips would you have for a leader as they interact with their team virtually? Should I ask people, how are they doing? Is it disingenuous?
Not if you mean it.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, 100% yes for me. I think the more employees feel supported by their caregiving system at work, which is terminology that we use here at Chris 180, it's critical. So just because we can't pop into each other's office anymore, we can still pop onto a Zoom or a phone call to check in and say, hey, how you doing? What we've noticed with our staff who are supporting, the community at large via telehealth is, because we've been able to break down so many barriers with people accessing services, that people can access our therapy from their phone or from their computer, our therapists barely have any breaks now. Whereas at the counseling centers, they might have had a no-show or a cancellation in between appointments. So on the one hand, it's phenomenal, and on the other hand, we have to be really intentional about checking on our people, because anybody working right now from home or at the office, there's no easy, it's level with the challenges that come along with working at home with kids or without kids, or if you're an essential worker and still going into work, it's so challenging.
Yeah, and I'll just say to that question, the feedback that we've gotten, I think, has been positive from the staff. They've appreciated the check-ins, they've appreciated, because it has been genuine, and I'm always a proponent of transparency. And so I will say to them, kind of like Brittany said, this was a good day, this wasn't a good day. or yes, that impacted me too. Just being validating and supporting and giving them the opportunity. I think if you create that platform for them, they can use it, or they can choose not to use it. But just knowing that they have that support, I think, has been really valuable for our team.
We have another question, but I also want to share really quick for any supervisors out there or people that are leading teams. One of the things that we do at Chris 180 is routines and rituals. And so we start our meetings off with some sort of check-in. And so two of my favorites recently have been, what have you learned about yourself recently? And so really encouraging people to be reflective about their experience. And then another kind of fun, lighter one, and also a temperature check, is called Wow, Pow, and Chow. And we actually did it, I see Chandra shaking her head, we did it on our executive leadership team call today, but it's where somebody shares a wow, so something really good that happened this week. Somebody shares a pow, something that was challenging or something daunting, something that's not going so well. And maybe you share your chow, which is the best thing that you ate recently. So that's been really fun to just kind of do a temperature check and then also keep it light with team members.
Absolutely, those are great. So we do have a question.
We've got two questions, so we have a few more minutes to try to get through both of them.
Okay.
The first one is from Instagram, and it says, any advice for multi-generation homes? Ideas for keeping home life harmonious if there are different or 3 to 4 generations in one home?
That's a big one.
Yes.
I think you have to respect each other's space. That's the first thing that I think of. I grew up in a fairly large family, multi-generational as well, and that was one of the biggest things for us, kind of respecting when we want to have that family togetherness time, and then also respecting when we didn't, because those moments presented as well. So really being intentional. Brittany talked about this before, about being intentional, being honest, and creating those moments. So maybe saying, you know what, Thursdays at 7 is when we all get together, and this is what we do as a family, Thursday at 7, and everybody can come in and do this. And then maybe there are times that each person gets to choose, or each generation, so to speak, gets to choose what the family does. So everybody's getting something that they like, being able to be supported in the way that they need, but also being able to say when it's time to have some, like we call it, me time.
Absolutely.
That as well.
Yeah, because everybody's going to have different activities that soothe them during this time. You know, one idea for older generations and younger generations is, what can the older generation teach the younger generation? Can they do, make a meal together? Can they share an old recipe that they haven't made in years? That could be, a way for them to come together on some common ground.
And I think that works the other way as well.
Absolutely.
Like my daughter shared, and she just felt really great about it, that she was able to teach something to my dad. And he was transparent enough to say he did not know that. And for her at 10, and to be able to say, hey, I taught something to my grandfather, was really powerful.
The other thing I've seen, which is hilarious, is the new craze, kids teaching their parents on TikTok. And so teaching them the dance moves of today has been hysterical and just a really fun way to bridge the gap.
Those are great and hilarious.
So we've got one final question, and this one comes from someone who says, and I live alone and I don't have to interact with people much right now. How can I still keep up good relationships and good energy and not grieve if I have to be inside for another month or so?
Well, I can speak to this because I also live alone and I don't have kids. So one thing that I've done recently is tap into an old hobby that I haven't done in years, and that's been painting. And so that's been really powerful for me and kind of re-sparked a new energy and has kind of helped me occupy my time. And then the other thing that I thought about doing, and admittedly I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I want to put the names of a lot of people in my life that I haven't connected with recently kind of in a hat and draw one every day and commit to having a 20 or 30 minute phone call or just even a quick check-in, because I think that could be a really cool way to reconnect with people that are important to our lives, that we just haven't had that opportunity to do so recently.
Yeah, another thing you talked about that I thought was really cool, you were saying about having coffee on your balcony.
Yeah, so my apartment complex, recently there's been a group of neighbors that has gone outside in the morning and kind of had coffee, and done kind of a virtual just check-in, and you know, it's sometimes just enough to feel connected, and we're all sitting on our balcony having our morning coffee, just knowing that other people are experiencing some of the same challenges. I've seen other people do that with their kids on their porches or their balconies, just kind of waving to their neighbors. So that's been really cool.
Yeah, and I know Brittany and I have spent a lot of time today trying to give you tips and tricks and recommendations that you can do at home and can do independently. But if you're finding that you need a little bit more than what we've offered today, Chris Counseling Center is here. We have locations in East Atlanta, we have locations in Gwinnett County, in Atlanta proper, and we are open, we're available, we're able to do sessions via telehealth, via telephone. Some of our counseling centers are still taking clients in person if that's what you need, but we're absolutely here to help and to support you the best we can in this time.
And it's so easy to get enrolled. You do not have to come into the building. It's as quick as a phone call or a visit to our website, and you can enroll and talk with a therapist within sometimes hours and within days in some cases. So we are here to help. Please reach out. We're excited to serve our community during this really challenging time.
I want to thank Brittany and Ashley for the wonderful conversation today. Thank you all for joining us and being so engaged. In these really hard times, we want to make sure that we keep our community tight together. And that's our hope to do in these Lunchtime Live series. If there's topics you want to hear us talk about, make sure to send us a private message or leave it in the comments, and we'll address those in the next few weeks as we continue this series to provide help and resources. Again, if you're interested in our counseling services, please reach out at chris180.org today. And we are doing more work than ever before in the community, from therapy sessions to food distribution. We continue to need your help to reach more in our community during this very difficult time. Please go to chris180.org/donate to give today if you can. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.